those of you who got an invite. Welcome to Nerd Prom.
No matter where in the world you are, we're all Nerds International. With the hyphen. Nerds International proudly presents.
We want to take you on a quest for knowledge. One that will take us from ancient medieval fantasy across the far reaches of space to the distant future. To many savage worlds.
Welcome to the Wild Eye Podcast, SWADE edition, episode 66. This is a podcast dedicated to pinnacle entertainment, savage worlds aimed at beginners and veterans alike. What's going on, Lamoureux, squeaky chair, my man?
I'm excited. SWADE came out Friday.
What?
Late Friday.
Did it?
Yeah, it did. Have you guys had a chance to read it?
No.
I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Savage Worlds, honestly, so I was going to download it, but I didn't. I actually printed it out and then put it in the bin.
Stiff out of the gate, Harrison. Stiff out of the gate.
That is, of course, a joke.
You put all your JPEGs in the trash bin?
Exactly. No, I'm well excited, man. I downloaded all this stuff. I was surprised as well because I didn't obviously really follow the emails because I get so many emails from, Pornhub, Love Honey, all of this stuff. And what ended up happening was just that I missed loads of the emails. So I was really surprised to see all the freebies you get, like the soundtracks, old books like the Deadlands Noir and all of that stuff. And I was like, yeah, boy, loads of freebies. Thanks a lot, Pinnacle. I appreciate that. Loads of JPEGs. I mean, the JPEGs are off the hook. So I was really happy. But more importantly, we got SWADE Core, or Savage Worlds Adventure Edition. Should we just call it Adventure Edition? I really hate calling it SWADE.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Man, you know you're getting old when your email no longer consists of email from porn sites, but like from your car dealership where they remind you to bring your car in to get your warranty work done, or your dentist is like, don't forget you're due for your cleaning. I miss my old email. I've started emailing back like all those Nigerian Prince scams just for someone to talk to. Yeah, I think Eric does the same thing. You two are probably because you have no friends.
Yeah, that's where I find my friends. But yeah, I'm excited because we can finally talk about it now. As we mentioned before in previous episodes, we started a campaign. While we're only one session in, we're gonna play the second one later today. But Rippers. And last Friday, the same day that Adventure Edition came out, we played some Wiseguys over on the RPG Brewery, so that'll be available for people to watch soon. Also on YouTube, I'll throw a link in there, although it's not live on YouTube yet. But you can check it out. So yeah, that's what this show's going to be about. But first, we received a little bit of feedback. Our last episode, the bonus one on Low Life. So we got Corey Judd. He said, my only problem with Low Life, and it's a matter of me wrapping my head around it, is it's almost entirely its own dialect. Not a bad thing by any means, since it's written from a denizen's point of view. I find it like reading 300 pages of Dr. Seuss without any weed. That said, I too bought everything Andy had at the table at Con on a Cob, and look forward to running some Low Life. I thought the 300 pages of Dr. Seuss without any weed was kind of spot on there.
You know what? He's absolutely right, because it is its own dialect almost. I found that when I first started reading it, I started to regret buying it because I was like, oh my God, I don't understand a bloody word this guy's trying to say. But once you read a couple of pages, you get into the flow of the way it's written. and then it starts to make sense, and you're like, oh yeah, I get it. And you start to get into the way that the characters speak, the weird names that people have, all of that kind of stuff, and then it makes sense, and you find that actually it's really beautifully written. So I totally get it, but it takes a bit of getting used to. I totally agree with that.
All right, and also Frank Turfler, he says, great review. I was on the fence about Low Life because it seems to be just a little too weird, but after listening to the review, it sounds like a Ralph Bakshi film on acid. I'd love to see a Wiseguys Low Life mashup. I think it would do really well. And why isn't this a show on Cartoon Network?
Quite how you would do a Wiseguys Low Life mashup it would be bloody difficult. So like, what would it be like? E.T., where they're stumbling around and then suddenly they come across one of these beasts in their basement and they have to get it home? What? I don't know. Or would it just be?
Actually, there's a free one sheet called A Hello to Arms, and it's about a bunch of gangsters that have to go get something for their boss. So I think the mashup is already there somehow. It's just a flavor, because you did mention that one of the concept archetypes that you can play is a gangster. So
yeah,
why not?
And a pimp. So yeah, you could just have pimps, gangsters rolling around doing all this kind of stuff. Man, it would be sweet, and then have some of their new mechanics and some of the weapons from Wiseguys. Make it happen.
Oh. Yeah. I'm gonna play a Twinkie pimp. That's too awesome.
The digital dungeon master comes in. He says, "Great review, Harrison." I feel like the digital dungeon master really knows his stuff. That's a guy I respect when he says things like that. Great review, Harrison. I'll just say it again. I'm not into these types of settings to be able to worship the Aunt Jamimi god. I may pick it up. Plus, all the other off-the-wall names seem fun also. Yeah, he's right. Thanks. And I just want to say, he says, great review, Harrison. I mean, what a guy. Matt Stark, he says he wants me to answer the question at the end of the show. Eric, if you could reiterate that question.
Sure. So at the end of the show, before the drilling got too intense over Harrison's apartment, because it's all about, being funny, right? The comedy value, I think, of Low Life. And what I've found, well, it's my own experience, is that when you try to play something really serious or scary, get a bunch of guys together, they just want to have fun, and everybody ends up just cracking a joke at every opportunity. It's like if something gets too intense, someone will crack a joke. It's like when you watch a scary movie, that's what I'll do. Like if it gets too intense and I'm supposed to be scared now, I want to be the tough guy that doesn't get scared, so I'll crack a joke to lighten the mood a little bit. But that happens a lot in RPG games I play in, I run or play in. So it seems like when you play something that is funny, yes, there'll still be some jokes in there, but it won't break immersion as much because it's kind of part of the setting, the flavor. So my question was basically if you guys had experienced the same thing.
Well, yeah, it's kind of weird because I think I started to mention this, but we're playing a campaign of a different non-Savage Worlds game, sorry everybody, called Gen Lab Alpha, where you play as half human, half animal hybrids at the moment. And it's funny because in that, like, everyone takes it kind of seriously. Like, there are definitely funny moments where we laugh. And, even in that book, it says, yeah, you're going to laugh because you're playing, a big giant moose or on two legs or a dog or whatever. But more often than not, this has been one of the more serious games I've played. And it's because the comedy is already baked into the setting. You know what I mean? And it seems like what people tend to do is they tend to just be like, okay, there's no need for me to crack jokes because it's already in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play my character and take it a bit more seriously. And I found I had the same experience with Vampire the Masquerade, because actually that's a setting that is really, really kind of silly when you look at it. It's these emo vampires that take themselves way too seriously. And in reality, it is kind of silly when you look at it. And so all the players, they took that game actually seriously. They took the role-playing of the characters seriously. And so, yeah, I completely agree. Whereas whenever I played a horror game, people always, like when they kill a vampire, they say, "Thank you very much," or whatever.
One-liners.
That's horrible.
What about you, Gary? Do you have any opinion on that, or not really?
No, I was reading the last email, so I wasn't really paying attention to what you guys were talking about.
Podcast hosting at its finest.
Well, there's this last email that you guys aren't reading that says, "Hello, Eric. This is Mumbatu. I am a Nigerian prince." Oh, wait a second. That's a scam one.
Well, we might as well read it out, because otherwise it'd be rude not to, you know? I mean, what's Mumbatu saying? Is he a Savage Worlds fan?
Yes, he would like you to send him a box set of the new SWADE, and then as soon as the check clears, he'll make sure that he emails you the check as well.
Okay, Mumbatu, there's one on its way to you now.
Fantastic.
Nice guy, man.
Swell dude.
We got princes playing Savage Worlds now. That's pretty awesome.
Wow. What an honor.
Wow, what a show. I'm so excited. How about we just move on to the podcast log right now and talk about Adventure Edition a little bit.
Hey, it's the podcast log.
All right, so for the plug, so while we've known that this edition was coming for a long time now, and I was trying to figure out how I wanted to approach this. I mean, there's the approach that Gary took on the Murder Hobo show with Savage Drifts, where they basically go through the book page by page, and I didn't really want to do that. I wanted some different. And I know other podcasts are going to do their own thing, but what I thought would be helpful to people is to talk about our experience actually playing it. So what came up during the games that we played, the new rules or changes, and discuss that, our opinion on it. Granted, it's still early. It's still only 2 sessions that we've played. But as we play more, as there are more episodes, I'm sure our feedback is going to be more important. So, yeah. All right. So first things, so Rippers, because the guys didn't have access to the book yet, what I did is use the pregens from Rippers Resurrected, like 7 or 8 of them that you can choose from, and they pick their characters. And I just, I don't like to use that word, but converted those pregens to Adventure Edition. And this, I think this can be helpful to GMs if you want to make the transition right now. It was fairly easy, actually, or you can use that for NPCs even. Basically, it's the skills. The skills change quite a bit. And what I would do is just remove the ones that weren't in use anymore. So, example, climbing and swimming, they're gone. It's part of athletics now. So how did I change that? Well, and if someone has climbing or swimming at a D6, I would just give that character athletics D6, because now athletics is part of the core skills. Everybody gets at least a D4 in it. But if someone had one of those skills that were folded into athletics at D6 or higher, whatever, D8, then I would just match that total. If someone had survival and tracking, well, tracking is gone. It's now part of survival. I would just use the same value as survival, and yeah, I mean that's basically it. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. One of the skills, Streetwise, is now an edge, and yes. So for Streetwise, then now, well, we'll talk about networking in a little bit, because that's basically how it works. But Streetwise, if it fits the background of being kind of a criminal underworld type of thing, then I would just give them the edge instead. pretty simple. I think the biggest change for the edges that came up was while two characters had the noble edge, and that edge is now gone and basically broken into two edges. One being aristocrat, and the other ones are like I think fame or something like that. So I just replaced these two. Oh yeah, and one thing I didn't really do, and maybe I should have done, but it would have been more trouble than what I thought was worth, was that I didn't count the skill points. I did just for one character to see what it would add up to, and it added up to 15 skill points total. But here's the thing now, because you get 5 core skills at a D4, character creation in skills, it's only 12 skill points. But there is a setting rule in the book that called more skill points. You know, I don't think it's a big deal. If you really want it to be really fair and follow the character creation part, then don't convert your characters, just build them from scratch again. But if you just want to use old pregens to run a one shot, or you've got your NPCs, which you shouldn't count the skill points anyway, just do that. I mean, it's just a switch.
Yeah, I think it was a good idea to try and convert them, to try and see what some of the differences are. But I think what a good idea might be, if you're running some old settings, just make your characters from scratch and make some pregens anyway, because it might actually give you kind of an insight into how building characters works in this anyway. I think it was kind of cool of you to convert the old ones, because it sort of taught you some of the differences, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I think I will probably see a lot of people just building them from scratch. So what were you saying? Yeah. You said something about networking, like to see Streetwise am I right in saying it's not a skill in this anymore?
Right. Streetwise is now an edge that gives you +2 to persuasion, and I think intimidation as well when using networking. So before, well, in Deluxe, when while you would use the Streetwise skill to go out and gather information, you know, you mingle with the crowds and you hear the rumors and that type of thing. You're looking for information, so you would use Streetwise, and that's how it worked. But often, what would come up when I ran games is that people would make a case for using persuasion instead, just describing their approach and saying, I'm going to use persuasion to go talk to a specific person and try to, you know, get the information out of them. So now networking basically replaces the Streetwise skill. You go out and gather information, and you can use persuasion and then use bribes, that type of thing, or you can use intimidation and go out and break legs. So you got 2 different approaches. But if you use intimidation, the people that it's not going to give you a good reputation, right? They can turn on you because you've been mean to them trying to get the information out. So there's consequences. There are consequences there for going with intimidation instead, and you can even make that better, easier for you if you start breaking legs, where you breaking skulls, hurting people, but that also means that you can come out of that with some I think it's fatigue that you can come out of because you're using that tactic.
That was going to be my next question, like because how is it mechanically different? Because we kind of did this in Rippers, where Jay and I went out kind of gathering information, and one of us was using persuade, one of us was using intimidation. It was like a good cop, bad cop routine, right? And as we were doing it, to me, it didn't feel that much different from using Streetwise. So what's like the mechanical difference there? Like is there, like you said that you can get fatigued from using intimidation. So is there like something that happens when you fail now or something like that? Or is it just...
Yeah, it's called busting heads, and it means that Well, it's first it says that it alienates her contacts for a week, but it adds plus to the roll. But it raises the stakes so that if you fail, you end up with bumps and bruises, and a critical failure bears more serious consequences. So it could be, I don't know, a street gang that turns on you because you use that tactic. Whereas if you use persuasion, which is called a nice way, you use money talks. You can get a +2 if you're giving a little bit of money there to loosen some lips. And then the GM decides the amount required for that, which should be around what the starting funds are, so around $500 worth. So these are the two ways, basically. And,
so what do you make of this then? Do you prefer this over how it used to be?
Yeah, for sure, I do, and I'll tell you why. Okay. So here's the thing. So the old way, Streetwise was a skill that you took, or it was a skill, right? So when it comes time to trying to find out some information on what's going on around here, usually everybody looks around the table and finds the guy with Streetwise, obviously the highest roll or whatever, and away they go. That person's the one that makes the roll. So you're limiting the gameplay to just that one person. Now this isn't an everyday kind of a thing, or you know what I mean. But now it's like everybody gets to join in the fray, because networking is not. It's not a skill. It's a section of the game. Like, you're going to run a chase. Well, now you're going to run a networking session. So everybody gets to go around the table and either use their intimidation or persuasion, whether they have it or not, to go around and try and find their own way or come up with their own deal for doing whatever. Betty Lou, she's going to go persuade the local, sheriff or whatever, to maybe try and get some information on the location of a bad guy or something like that. And then maybe, Tommy the badass, he's going to go down to the local pizza place, and because he knows this guy that sells drugs, and he's going to beat the crap out of him until he tells him where this drug dealer guy is. Like, it gives everybody the opportunity to do something. And I like that there's a fail aspect to it too. Like Eric was saying.
I like the fail aspect of it. Was it not the case that everybody house ruled it that you could use all three of those things for gathering information anyway? Like, not in every setting, but in most. Because being able to persuade somebody to give you the information, or intimidate them to give you the information, that makes a lot of logical sense anyway. That's what most people were doing, wasn't it? Or am I just being stupid here?
Nope. I agree. I mean, like I said, it came up in my sessions quite often where people wanted to use persuasion and intimidation instead. And this is basically, well, let's use the two examples that we ran into. The first one was Rippers. We're playing the Laughter of Death. Spoilers here. If you want to play it, just fast forward a little bit. But there are murders going on. Some children are found dead, and the Rippers need to find out what's going on. So there's a scene there where they go around that small town and try to gather information. So we had three of you guys that went out in the street and just started asking random villagers and that type of thing, and being nice. Well, you guys weren't nice. You were just going the not so nice way with intimidation, where you ended up beating an old man and giving out the information.
To be fair, that old man deserved it.
Did he? What did he do? But yeah, you had these guys, and meanwhile there was another group of two that were using the new skill. Well, it's not really a new skill; it's just named differently. But research used to be called investigation, and now it's called research because that's what it's for. That's another thing. People thought that investigation meant looking for clues at a crime scene. That is noticed. That's not investigation, but now it's called research. So no ambiguity there. Everybody knows what it's about. So yeah, Harrison, you were part of the three-man posse that went out there and using intimidation, and it was effective, but it will have repercussions later on.
Yeah.
Because you didn't make friends with the locals.
No, and I do like, as Gary said, I like the fact that that sort of failure is kind of built in there, because I feel like that's something that like often GMs forget. And I'm definitely guilty of that, because you go in somewhere, everyone rolls intimidation, even if it's something as simple as you pick up the old dude by the lapels and start shouting in his face. Well, that guy's not just going to go home and go, "Oh, what a terrible day," and hang up his coat. No, he's going to tell his mates, and they're going to come and find you and beat the balls out of you, because you've just rolled into town, and acted like you're king of the mountain, and started winding people up. So I like that they've added a little bit of flavor in there to say, hey, here's what happens if you fail. I like that. But I do feel as if all of the interpersonal skills were already being used to gather information. I think more often than not, Streetwise kind of should be the main one, but at a stretch, you can kind of use Persuade. Like, if you already know where the sheriff is, of course you can use Persuade, or Intimidation.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's also about the terminology. I mean, Streetwise to me implies a sort of knowledge of the underworld. It's got this criminal vibe to it. But yet, if you played a face character that wasn't in the underworld, maybe it was a corporate person or a political figure or whatever. It was kind of odd to say that person had a Streetwise skill, How does that person, So now you can still perform the same function, which is to get the information, but you're using persuasion, and you're probably really good at persuasion. Because I ran into a lot of face characters that had persuasion, but they didn't have Streetwise, and they should still be good at gathering information, but they weren't, because they didn't have the Streetwise skill as high, or Streetwise did benefit from charisma, which is another change. Charisma is totally gone now. But yeah, I think Streetwise as an edge makes more sense if you want to play, a character that grew up in the streets or is a criminal, that type of thing. That fits the concept better.
Yeah, you know what, and I totally understand what you mean with that. Let's say, for example, if you're in the corporate world, pick the Streetwise edge with the trapping of of office, and that way you're not always rolling the skills Streetwise. It doesn't seem quite as odd. So you're that guy who's always dressed up to the nines. You're the face character, but when it comes down to saying, "Hey, do I remember who sent that memo with the incriminating evidence?" You're not going, "Hey, roll Streetwise in an office." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I kind of get it flavor-wise. It is a little bit better too. But I think we should probably move on from this subject. So I see next here on the list, we've got, oh God. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. Chase rules.
Yeah, the big change. So, well, I'll start with, because we ran a chase to start the Wiseguys game that we played Friday. Let me ask Gary first, because Harrison didn't play in that one. Was too late where he was at, but overall impressions of the new chase rules, Gary, what do you think?
Well, guess what, Mr. Lamoureux? I happen to have read them all last night, and I think they're top dog, Mr. Top dog.
Why are you talking like that?
Anyways, I happen to have read the chase rules, and so here's something here. I don't know, Harrison, you want to hear something totally sad? Sometimes when you're looking at something like a little too hard, you don't realize the simplicity of it when it's right in your face. And so I said to Eric, I'm like, if you took the numbers across the side and just put them up and down, then it would make more sense, because our vehicles would be side by side. And he looks at me and he's like, what if I just turn the tokens sideways? Which probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but it was just it was a simple thing of like just the direction of the tokens made where people were in the chase just make more sense.
To make sense of what Gary just explained is that the setup is that you're supposed to lay out 9 cards on the table. I put 10 in, but we were playing online, so I was trying to find a way to run a chase scene, because you need to be able to see the cards and where everybody is at during the chase. So what I did, I just used an image. I laid out 10 cards in a row, and then below the cards I put tokens representing each car, all the guys, the Wiseguys were in a Cadillac, so I had a Cadillac token, but it was pointing up, and then I had the 2 cups card that were chasing them, and they were facing up as well. And that's where Gary asked, well, you should have put the numbers as a row instead of a column. And yeah, all I did was just turn the tokens sideways so it wouldn't look like an actual chase, and that's all that Gary needed to understand it. But what
so
about
sad.
the technical options, Gary? What did it feel like your choices and what you did mattered in this chase more than with Deluxe, where it was just, roll a skill and you get a card and that determines the order of what happens?
Okay, so now that I've read the chase rules and I understand the gimmick behind it, it makes way more sense what you were doing. But you had that cool little image with the 2 cars, up against the curbing, and so they're not going to fly off the side of the mountain with your little chase mat and stuff like that. And I didn't quite get what was going on. I did. I understood the gist of it, but here's the cool part that I figured out is, like, when you're running a chase scene at your table, just like you said, Eric, you lay down 10 cards, and you had done that on your map, but I saw those 10 cards as just labeled numbers 1 to 10. But you don't have to do that with that mat in game. You literally take a second deck of cards and lay down 10 cards, and you put your miniature on top of, say, card number 1 would be the base guy, and then if you have he's the chaser goes on card 1, and the chasee, you would put him however far ahead he would be. Say that in story he's 20 ahead. So on foot, each card represents 5 feet. And if he's 20 ahead, there's a space of 4 feet. So the guy you're chasing starts 4 cards ahead of you. So you have 10 playing cards laid on the table. Chaser is number 1. Chasee would be on the 3rd or 4th spot. And I see now that when we were playing it in Wiseguys, I get what you were doing now, and how that all works. And the simplicity of the system just made more sense when I realized that you could just use a regular deck of cards, lay 10 cards down, or however many you need, and just put your minis on top of where the cards are, and it's this back and forth thing. And then there's some cool things that happen when you land on the same card. So if you have 2 tokens, you finally catch up to your chasee. It opens up more options, which is pretty neat. I really like it now.
What do the cards represent then? Is it if you land on the same one, something cool can happen depending on the symbol or something like this?
No. What it means,
the suits, the suits. Go ahead, Gary, explain it.
So all the cards mean is each card represents a distance. So if you're in a foot chase, or a mounted or in a vehicle, it says those are the range increments: foot, mounted, or vehicle. Each card represents 5 feet. If you're in a plane or a sailing ship, each card would represent 25 feet. Kind of theater of the mind thing. On a jet or a starship, it would be 50. I guess feet is the wrong term to use, because we don't use feet inside of Savage Worlds. It would be 5 inches, 25 inches, or 50 inches. So that's what each card represents. If the guy is on card number 1, and the guy you're chasing is on card number 3, there's 2 cards between you, so he's 10 feet or 10 increments ahead of you. And the suits don't mean anything, but what does mean things is
they do complications.
Only when you're dealt a card. If you're dealt a card, see the face cards that you lay down. Oh, is that how it works? I thought if you were dealt a club, not landing on a club.
Yeah, if you're dealt a club, the card that you're on, the suit determines which kind of complication you face.
So let me ask you this: what happens then? Because when I ran a chase using the ones just before these, let's just call them like the 0.5 chase rules, right? I really liked them actually. I thought they were awesome. And one of the things is that it actually allowed for quite easy blending of, say, for example, if somebody's in a car and somebody's on foot, right? Yeah, okay. The unlikely thing is you're going to catch up in a car versus on foot. But let's say if somebody's in a car and somebody's on a horse, it's or whatever, you can blend those two. Is that doable using these chase rules, or car and a bike, or whatever?
They make special note of it.
You can, but they do say that if someone isn't fast enough to keep up with the chase, they should be just, they're out of the chase basically. Yeah, unless maybe it's like a tight back alley type of urban setting where someone on foot can take shortcuts. And this is basically what we did with Wiseguys at one point, while it was two cop cars chasing the Cadillac with the Wiseguys in it, and at some point they took a turn, and Gary's character, the amazing Linda, ended up out of the car, and she decided to run through a pharmacy to meet them on the other side, on the back side, while the Cadillac would just go around the corner and pick her up on the other side. And in this case, it made sense for it to be a foot chase within a car chase, because also the one of the cop cars was badly mangled, and just decided to stop and gave chase to Linda on foot. So you had a car chase going on at the same time as the foot chase through the pharmacy, which worked out. But if it was and someone was on foot and the rest was in a car, that person on foot would just drop out of the chase. There's just no way they can keep up with the pace, It's just use your common sense.
No, I get that, but like maybe in the first round, would there be a possibility that they could quickly snatch a car and be at the back of the chase?
You could,
you could put him on the first card, maybe.
Yeah, and he could try and catch up, which is pretty slick. So it's become a really, like, we did the bullseye method, the sort of like expanding rings out and shrinking rings in to determine the closeness to somebody. But now it's super simple. You just throw down your 10 cards. Eric confused me a little bit there. But the face cards do represent something, but only if you're dealt a club. So if you have 4 guys and they're in a car, only the driver, I don't want to say this, so hear me out. Only the driver counts, but that's not a true statement. The 3 guys in the car, so the token on the board would represent the driver of the car, but the 3 people inside can go at any time. We had, what's his name? Blelvis was wangling his jangler out the window. I threw up in a bag and threw it out the window, and somebody else did something else. But each one of these was in an attempt to help the driver do something. So I threw the bag of puke out, hoping to distract. What is it, Eric? It's distract and something else, or?
Yeah, distracted and vulnerable. It was basically a test. What I did, you threw it, so you used athletics for throwing, and then I opposed it with the cop that was driving the car, his driving, and you won. So it ended up right in the windshield, and I think you scored a raise over him too. So he was shaken, and he was also distracted, because you can choose distracted or vulnerable. And distracted means they're at -2 to all their actions until their next turn. So he ended up swerving all over the place and in the street trying to catch up to them because he couldn't see.
Yeah, so that's kind of how it works then. You have the 3 people in the vehicle. They all get to do something to help the main driver's role. And then he's the main driver's the guy that gets to choose whether or not he's going to like hold the car still or ram the vehicle next to him or try and change position or something like that. Now, here's the cool part that Eric's talking about. So I'm in the car, Lucian's hairpiece starts flapping, and little the amazing Linda's got a drug problem, so she's high on pills, sees his flapping toupee, and she's laughing at him while we're scooting down the street. So he kicks me out of the vehicle. Now, if the group with the car token is on the fourth spot, like 4 cards in, say position 4, when I get kicked out, I now become my own group on card 4, because that's where I got booted out of the chase sequence. Now, they circle the block, and I run through a pharmacy, and then they wait on the other side of the block for me to get back in. But when I'm my own person on a foot chase, you act as your own, because you're moving in your own turn. So you become the lead, the head of the group, kind of a thing. Like, because there's no group in foot chases, but it's super easy. But probably, I don't want to confuse it, but I really liked it. Now that I've read the rules and I realized what Eric was doing, I'm like, okay, this is actually really cool. There's some neat stuff that you can do. So if you have 2 people on card 4, you can do things like ram. Let's say you're doing a foot chase, Harrison. You got your one guy starts on card 1, the other guy starts on card 3. You can't actually melee the guy on card 3 from your first card slot. You have to change position in order to get onto or try and get onto the same card as this guy. And it's a free action. Change position is a free action. So if you roll with a raise, you can move up 2 spots, and then you can use your action to attack him. Here's the cool part. With change position, if you use it as an action, you get like a speed bonus, which allows you to give a +2 to your roll. So that will help you get a raise and maybe help you move an extra spot, because you're only moving 1 or 2 spots when you change position. So you start at 1, you're like, I'm going to change position, you make your roll, you get a raise, now you're on slot 3 with the guy you're chasing, and you can whack at him with your, well, you wouldn't be able to, because you would if you did multi-action. Oh man, I don't want to confuse the situation. I'm going to quiet down.
Yeah,
No, but I think
it does sound decent. I just, it's one of those things where you need to play it. Do you know what I mean? With the old chase rules, like I haven't read these ones yet. I think that's fairly obvious. With the old ones, when I read them, I was like, what a mess. And then when I played them, I was like, actually, these are decent compared to the old ones, which were a hot steaming pile of garbo. The new ones, I liked them, and I'm hoping that these ones they sound fun. But let me ask you one question. Here's the big question, right? When you see a chase film in a chase scene in a movie, right? You watch it. And it's fast, it's exciting, it's furious, it's fun. There's boxes being driven through, all of that type of stuff. What you want from a chase in a game is quick, right? Are they quick?
Well, here's one feedback. I'll answer that with another question in a little bit, because that's one of the feedback we got from someone that was watching us play, and he told me that he felt it wasn't fast, fun, and furious. So yeah, fair enough. It's not like it was in Deluxe where you could resolve a chase in 10 or 15 minutes. But here's the thing. In movies, when you see combat, it's really fast, and it's usually over in a minute or 2. But when you play it on the tabletop, it's going to take you, depending on number of participants, it's going to take you 45 minutes probably, right?
But the difference is
that Savage, a problem?
It's not a problem, because in Savage Worlds, the combat in this game is so much faster than other games. See, so it still feels like fast and action-packed, right? You dig?
I dig.
So the chases in this game, if they're taking up to an hour, at least I think it's got to be at least, like you say, 45 minutes to an hour. That's fine, because then that's one scene. It's quick. I think that's okay, as long as it's not like, oh yeah, as long as you can be like, what are you gonna do? Ram. Okay, roll it. Boom, you're done. As long as we can keep it to that type of pace, like it's the same as combat. Good options. Easy to quickly switch to the next player, then we're all good. As long as it's not like a big old pile of sugar lumps like the old, then we're fine.
No, I get what you're saying, but let me read. That's the first page on the chases and vehicles rules in the book. It says when to use these rules. Use the quick encounter rules if you just want to find out if the heroes catch a fleeing foe. If you want more detail, use these rules for highly mobile pursuits too large for the tabletop. You also find rules for resolving damage against vehicles and what effects it has on their drivers in this section. So I think that answers it. If you don't see a chase in a particular instance being important to the story, and you don't want make a big scene out of it, then use quick encounters. If you want a fun and highly tactical alternative to combat in your game session, use the chase, because basically you can use all the combat options within a chase, and then you have more, like Gary was talking about, all the maneuvers that you can do, like change position, force someone off the road, hold steady, which means that you're easier to hit now with ranged attacks, but people shooting from your car don't suffer the unstable platform penalties. Or you can use evade, which means that now it's harder for people to hit you. So you got all these tactical options, which to me, yeah, it is more crunchy. It's not as I wouldn't say flexible, but free-flowing as the rules in Deluxe. But then again, I think I was the only guy that liked the chase rules in Deluxe. So, it's like I said before, nobody's going to be happy with the chase rules. There's always going to be something that bothers people. And I think, because, before these chase rules, what other crunchy, tactical scene could you run in Savage Worlds for action that wasn't combat? Name one.
Your mom.
Yeah, nice one, Gary.
No, but that's how I look at it, is that if you wanted action and give people tactical options before in Savage Worlds, you had to run a combat. A dramatic task, it's just 5 rounds, just roll. All right, you hit it, now that happens. Chases were very abstract, where your choices really didn't matter. You just rolled your skill that determined which order you'd go in, how far you were from someone else, and then you just try to attack, use range attacks and tackle someone down, but you had to roll to get like a king or something, a face card, just to get within a range for doing that. So, but like they say in there, if you don't want to spend 45 minutes on a chase scene because it's not that important in the story, then just use a quick encounters, which is new rules that were added to Adventure Edition that we can talk about at some point. Maybe not today, because we ran 2 actually in Wiseguys, but we only have so much time. So I think, does that answer your question as to, is it as fast? It's just as fast as combat now. That will be my answer.
I think it does, because previously, because I didn't like the old chase rules, when I ran a chase, I would kind of use a variation on kind of combat, and so that's fine by me. I'm happy with that. Thanks very much, Shane.
What you want to do, Harrison, is when you go to your next gaming session with your buddies, is first of all, you read the rules so that you understand how they work. When you get there, have everybody gather around before you even start playing the game, and have them go through a mock chase up on foot, because each one of them gets to act as their own person, even though you'll understand the groups. If you put them all in a car, just the driver, and then anyways, you'll figure all that out. But just run through a mock chase, because to me, when you see the chase rules and you play the game and you're reading the rules and playing the game, it's similar to like when we talked about the shootout in Deadlands. Like, if you do it a few times, you get to realize how simple it really is, even though it seems extremely complicated right out of the gate. And once your players get the gist of what's going on, these chase rules really help you make sense of who's where and what you can do because of where you're at. So I think they're really fantastic. They add a ton of flavor to the game. I'd be way more interested in running a a chase because of things like complications. You can suffer fatigue and whatnot coming out of them and whatnot. And then there's also this tactical idea behind it where you can't attack somebody with a melee weapon if you're X far away. So there's all of these. Okay, this round I'm going to try and run up really fast, and maybe that guy runs. There's all of this. It's kind of like playing chess a little bit now. And it's like I said, with the Deadlands shootout in the streets thing. John, Steve, I know that when we played, Eric, it took a long time, but you're the only guy that had access to the rules when we played this. Now, if we were to play it, now that I know the rules...
The chase rules were out for everybody, but...
Nobody would have read them.
Nobody read them.
Nobody would have read them in the 2 hours.
That's probably it.
But that's what I'm saying.
Here's one final thing I want to add to Chase is that Gary talked about the second deck of cards that you use, and that will determine potential complications during the chase. But here's the thing: you could tailor those to a particular encounter where. You can make your own chase deck of cards because it doesn't matter what the cards are. It's just the suites that determine the kind of complications. So you could have a deck of 20 cards, each with different complications that happen. So if you're running a chase, let's say, I don't know, fairground during the county fair, you could have a card that says that the complication is that someone spills a drink on you. Another card could say that someone was sick in the Ferris wheel and you get hit by that. Another one could be that there's a family that takes the whole width of the path.
In America, I'm certain that would be the case.
Another one could be...
Wow!
Yeah, that's why I brought it up. It could be that there's a guy with his hot dog flavor it to a particular encounter. Now, in the core rules, those complications are fairly generic on purpose because they need to account for any situations. But in your own game, if you're preparing a certain chase in your campaign, in your session, you can customize them for that particular encounter, like I just explained with the fairground. But it could be a car chase in the streets, and I think it'd be fun.
Yeah, I like the idea.
It does sound it. Sorry, go on, Gary.
So just like Eric was saying, you can tailor it to your own game, which is pretty cool. There's the one other thing too that we didn't mention is you can set up. Say you have your 10 cards laid out, and you're on say token number 3, and your chasees, or let's say you're the chaser, and you're chasing a plane that's on a bombing run, and that's the GM's NPC, right? So you guys are all in these planes. Now, you can set it up so that at card 8, if the bomber gets to card 8, he drops his payload, which is pretty sweet, right? So in this chase scene, you have it's set up so that if you don't catch this guy or shoot him out of the sky by the time he gets to spot 8, then you sort of succeed. So it kind of is a little bit of a dramatic task as well. The complications are that Eric keeps talking about too. So you get puked on. If your token or miniature is on the card that says you get puked on, and you go into the next round of action or the next action round, if you're dealt a club, that complication happens. That's what Eric's talking about. You get puked on. So all of the symbols mean something. If you get a spades means you're bumped, a hearts means you're critical failure. Diamonds is the character or vehicle is bumped, which means you get to move ahead or backwards at the GM's discretion. So if there's a joker that's dealt, and it comes around to your turn, you're on the joker face card that you've dealt out of your random. Say it's card number 5 is the joker, and you're on that card in the chase scene, and you get dealt a clubs. That actually works as a bonus in your favor because that character or the vehicle is bumped 2 chase spots ahead. You would go from 5 to 7 with that bonus. So yeah, I like it, man. It's once you get the gist of it and you understand what's going on, I think you could make it happen much more quicker. And there's a lot more stuff going on in it. It's not just a blasé kind of like, oh, you gain some, you lose some. If you got up on someone too, Harrison, and say you're both on card 3, you could whack them and they could take some damage or whatever, or distracted, but you can actually bump them back. So then now they become behind you. But you still have a good sense of where everybody's at in theater of the mind as well as on the card deck. Anyways, I'm a fan. I like it. I'm looking forward to using it.
It does actually sound cool. I can't believe it. Who knew? In any case, let's stop talking about chases for a little while, because we on this podcast, well, not just on this podcast, but in the Savage Worlds community at large, are all big fans of a little game called Genesis. And what I wanted to say was that Shane Hensley has been very vocal about his love for Genesis, and as a result, he's decided to include story points in the game. So now, Bennies can be used to influence the story. Now, Eric, would you mind explaining how this works?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of new ways.
Christ
to
almighty,
use
Eric.
Bennies.
Look, you really need to sort out this bloody internet connection. Doesn't it sound like Eric's underwater, Gary? Did you hear that?
Yeah, right out of the gate.
Right, seeing as Eric sounds like he's been submerged under 5,000 feet of water, I'll give it my best, guys. Right, so Bennies, as we all know, these are small discs. Now, you give one of these discs to the GM, and you can influence the story somehow. So let's say, for example, you want an old friend to come back. Oh, look, it's Bob the Slop from the Clopper Job. Or it's an NPC or something like this, or you want to have a flashback to have an item, or you want to have a flash forward to an event to happen later on in the session, or something like this. As long as you okay it with the GM and you give him that Benny, that's influencing the story. Is that right?
Yes, it is identical to flipping a story point in Genesis. Influencing the story is entirely up to the game master. I like that that's the first sentence out of the gate, because I won't be using this. I don't like that idea in a game. All of a sudden you just remember that you have this item that you didn't have. I prefer the complication of the situation. For example, when we played in the Genesis game, you just all of a sudden had a flashback to getting your handcuffs in the store for that you just happen to have, and I just think that it's weak sauce in gameplay. You should have found another way to try and tie this guy up, and then maybe use your belt or use your shirt or something like that is going to give this guy a chance maybe to get away at some point to make the story more interesting. But to handcuff the guy just because you're flipping a story point or spending a Benny, I'm not. It's not my cup of tea.
I'd say the only way that it balances it is that you have to remember that they're a limited resource. However, I do get what you mean, because it can be a solve the puzzle for me token. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
I get exactly what you mean.
Yeah, so I'm not a fan of it, but yeah, you can use a Benny to find an additional clue if you're stuck, come up with some mundane but needed item. That's the part that I don't like, or simply push an unimportant non-player character into being a bit more agreeable, so you can sort of persuade him or whatever. Not a fan of that, because that just, you know what I mean? Like, we've always said that some of the best games or the best things that happen in game comes out of critical failure, some of the best situations. And this is just taking those away.
What? Another thing is that I've always found some of the best situations come out of when players are stuck as well. Because, it's the same with like Call of Cthulhu with luck points and it's what is it? Shadowrun with their, I can't remember what it's called, but something
Karma.
like that. Karma, right? You see, the thing about it is that you have these things where it's just a get out of jail free card for when players are stuck. But if they're stuck, some of the best solutions or the worst solutions come out at those times, and that's when stuff goes completely wrong. See, they think. They put their heads together and they go, come on, let's think. It must have been this guy, and they get the completely wrong guy. And that's when stuff I find gets really fun. And then as a GM, you start needing to think, how can I give them some clues or whatever? And then suddenly they go beat up the guy, and he goes, and they go through his drawers, and suddenly they get the clues, and they go, oh dear.
Right?
No, I get what you guys are saying here, and it makes sense. But you have to pay attention to the wording in that influence the story. It says unimportant non-player character, so it can't be an important one. And it says some mundane but needed item. Here's the thing. Also in the wording, it should be up to the GM. Basically, if your players come up with an idea, you're still in control of the game, regardless of what some people might say that the dice control the games. The GM controls the game. You're the one who's going to decide if this is a valid use of spending a Benny to influence the story or not. It comes down to you. You make the decision. Don't blame the system for screwing up your game, because you have to decide what's good or what's not good for your game in this instance. But to me, as a GM, I like to run a game where there's a good flow to it. And when the players get stuck and get frustrated, I don't think it's fun. So I like the idea of being able to spend a Benny and get a little bit of help to move the story forward a little bit. But that's just me.
See, I think there's a difference between stuck and frustrated, between like hitting a slight roadblock block and then putting their heads together and discussing what like the evidence they've got so far. I think there's a difference between those two things. And I think sometimes when you add mechanics like luck and influence the story, that can lead to laziness with players, where they just go, well, what's the point? Why are we even discussing this? Spend a Benny. Come on.
I don't like it when we're going to spend half hour discussing what we're going to do next. To me, that's not fun.
Yeah. See, it's not happening if you're playing with me. And here's the other thing too. In the day and age of yes and no buts, you're kind of a jackass if you don't. If Harrison rolls in and says, "Oh yeah, I'm going to spend a story point, or I'm going to spend a Benny, and I'm going to have this flashback to when I was getting handcuffs," and as a, you know what I mean, and then as a GM, you're like, "No, you didn't." It just makes you a jackass. So I would take it out of the game to begin with. I get where you're saying in certain circumstances, spend a Benny to get a clue because it's just not fading in. But if that's the point that I'm at with my players in the game, I'm just going to give it to them. You know what I mean? Like, because I want the story to continue on, and I don't want to phase myself out. But yeah, I don't want them spending Bennies on here. Yeah, because every time they roll into a room, they'll be like, "Spend a Benny, give me a clue." Spend a Benny. I got scissors that I needed to spend a Benny. I bought lock picks. Spend a Benny. I got handcuffs. Spend a Benny. I got rope that I didn't have before. You know, I don't like that at all.
You still step in there and decide if you accept it or not.
I agree. And if you don't, you're a dick.
I do think Gary makes a good point though when he says that about how you're going to seem like a jackass, because one of the points is that when it comes down to like it's that yes and no but thing, right? Because when a player asks for something and you say no, then it's going to be like, yeah, but I want to spend a Benny to get it. And then you're going to see players getting offended. See, personally, I wouldn't, because I'm just like, if it was us playing, right, we all take the piss out of each other. We joke, all of this, right? And if Eric said to me, no, of course you can't have that, we'd all just go, what a jackass, or we'd call you a douche or whatever, and we'd have a joke about it. But we'd be like, yeah, totally fine, whatever. I don't care if you don't give that to me. But the point is that I think there's going to be people getting offended. And personally, this is ultimately something that I think people, at least people that are new to this type of thing, they're going to need to get used to it, find where the line is. And I think that they're going to need to understand tone properly in games if you want to use it properly, because you can't go crazy with it. You have to understand the tone of each setting, because if you're going into like a very, very serious horror game, or a very dour type of game, and then somebody says, yeah, can I have a pair of roller skates to get away from monsters better? You go,
Right? I will say too, like, one of the cool parts about this new SWADE system that I really like is how they've expanded on everything. They've expanded the chase rules to become more of a chess game. They've expanded what you can do with Bennies and stuff like that, which is pretty sweet. So, mostly before, most people would just re-roll their trait. You want to shoot, you miss, you spend a Benny to hit or to roll again, recover from shaken or soak. But now you can do all of those things. Plus, you can now spend a Benny to draw a new action card. So when you're determining initiative, if you get a crappy 2, you could be like, nah, spend a Benny, give me another one. You can reroll damage. So they've basically included blood and guts as part of the Benny economy. And here's one that I didn't know you could do is regain power points. You can spend a Benny and get 5 power points back. I like that. I like that there's more stuff that they say that you can do right out of the gate. I think that's cool.
Yep. Too cool, man. I like that a hell of a lot. But there was something that that you wanted to talk about, Gary, was casting the boost trait power. I don't know why this is in the list of subjects here.
Eric put it in there. I don't know why he wants me to talk about it.
Okay.
Well, I did my homework after the session, Rippers, and noted the couple new things that we did during that session. And one of them was, Gary plays Esmeralda, the gypsy, curse-slinging witch in that game. And at the beginning of this session, I think he casted the boost trait power, and I remember he kind of liked it because he could powers have changed quite a bit, I think, and now you can spend more power points to give the benefits of boost trait to more than one character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is, now that you mention it, see, when I read this, when I was reading the show notes, I'm like, I didn't know you could, there was a casting boost trait thing. It was like turning the car sideways, and then when I read it again, it was like, oh yeah, boost trait is a skill. Let me check out the boost trait skill so that I can make sure that I got my stuff.
Boost trait is a power. It's not a skill.
Sorry, the power is what I should have said.
Yeah, you idiot. Come on, have you ever played this game before? What is this game called again? Genesis?
Yes. Well, in Genesis, one of the things that Pearson said that he likes about the magic casting system is the flexibility. So you can take a skill that, say, is a bolt. They have a bolt, I guess, inside of Genesis. But if you want to add on to it, you can just increase the difficulty, and you can take that bolt spell from a single. What's the word I'm looking for? So from a certain amount of damage, you can increase the damage, you can increase the range, you can change it from, say, change the element on it from being, to electricity or whatever. But every time you try and change that spell, you're going to have to add a difficulty dice to see whether or not you succeed. But Savage Worlds now has sort of that same thing built in. But I don't want to say it's a simpler system, it's just a different system. So with boost lower trait, spells for me right now we're on par with Rifts. You can multi-action spells, which I frickin' love. That is so awesome that it's now part of the core. In Rifts you could do that, but you're going to take your so you can cast up to 3 spells at a -4 penalty, which now means that I could cast boost on somebody or multiple people. I can cast armor on myself and shoot. I'm going to do all 3 rolls in my turn at a -4. The only difference is if I cast boost lower trait even at a -4, if I want to increase the number of people that I cast it on, I don't have to cast it on individual people anymore. I can add recipients for an extra PowerPoint. I can cast it on certain people. So if there's 5 people in your party and you want to spend the initial 2 plus 4 more, you're now spending 6 power points and you're covering the entire party, but that's only one spell that you're casting, which is fan-frickin-tastic. You can also, if you want, make it so if you're casting lower trait against somebody, for 1 power point, you can increase it so that it's a stronger spell and reduce the spirit roll by 2 that they need in order to remove the effect from themselves. So there's multiple things, and this is across the board basically with any spell. Eric, I have a question for you because we've been talking about this. Bolt has changed a lot I'm trying to find where my bolt is in my list here, but it's right there. So bolt is now 1 power point per bolt. If I wanted to cast 3 bolts, that's 1 action, 3 bolts, and I get a wild die for each one of them?
Yeah, right now, basically, you would have to cast, from what I understand anyway, and if someone listening to this thinks I got it wrong, let us know, please. But from what I understand is that bolt needs, if you want to cast 3 bolts, you need to cast it 3 times.
What if I want to cast 3 boats?
Nope.
Boats. But yeah, what you were talking about, Gary, were the modifiers too. So each power, well, most of the powers will have custom modifiers for that. But if you look on page 151, there's some called power modifiers, and these can apply to any power. So you have the range modifier. You can double the range. You can double the power's listed range for 1 point, or triple it for +2 power points. So, and if something was, well, it says this modifier may not be used on powers with a range of touch. But other than that, you can double or triple the range of any power. If it's an attack power, you can add the armor piercing modifier to it. You can add the heavy weapon modifier to your powers. You've got lingering damage also. You could have an acid bolt with lingering damage if you wanted to. You could have the selective. So let's say you got an area of effect power like blast. If you choose selective, then your friends that are in that medium burst template would not get hurt by it, which I think, it adds a lot more flexibility to the spell or power system, whatever you want to call it.
Yes, super happy with it. That makes a lot more sense with the bolt, what you're saying. So each bolt, if I cast 3 bolts, I'm now casting it at a -4. 0 for the first one, -2 for the second one, and -4 for the third one. But each one of those is going to be, here's the beautiful part about it. So in the old school, you cast bolt for X amount for a PowerPoint. Every additional bolt up to, I think it was 3 bolts, was an extra PowerPoint. But you just made 1 roll and then you rolled your damage. So in the new bolt, every time you fire a bolt spell, the bolt is going to be 2d6 or 3d6 with a raise. But the modifier on top of this one now is for an extra 2 power points. You can automatically make it a 3d6 damage, and it'll become 4d6 with the raise. So all they've done then is taken the same idea that Genesis has, where you're creating it, you're changing the spell, and every change makes it more difficult. They're doing the same thing, but instead of making the difficulty increased, it's just the power it costs to cast it is increased, which is fantastic.
Yeah, but if you use the no PowerPoints setting rule, then it would basically increase the difficulty, because you don't use PowerPoints to cast, but every PowerPoint that it costs to cast a power becomes a difficulty. That's the no PowerPoints.
Yes.
Here's a cool thing that someone pointed out yesterday with the powers. So one of the new, it's not really a new edge, but in the power edges, it used to be called new power, where you pick this edge and you pick a new power, but now it's called new powers. You get to pick 2 new powers when you pick this edge.
That is spectacular.
There's a lot of depth with the power system now, and we can't cover it all in this episode, but I'm sure it will come up more and more where we can bring it up. But finally, Harrison, since you didn't read the book yet, you still wanted to say something about the book, what you think about it?
Unfortunately, I haven't had the chance. I have obviously, I've really enjoyed what we played of it, and it was really great fun. However, I've had a quick flip through the book. I'm one of the only people in the bloody community that hasn't had the chance to bloody read it, and you know why? Because Super Smash Brothers came out on Friday, and I've been playing that. I'm so sorry, everyone. But the point is that the trade dress, they finally updated it. They finally made it look nice. And let's be honest, right? The old one, It was steaming hot garbo. And this new one, it looks well good. It looks well good. The trade dress is fan-freaking-tastic. All the artwork is consistent. That was one of the biggest problems with the last one, right? Is that they had different, like, they had artwork that didn't blend with this piece of artwork. This one looked completely different to the other one. And yes, okay, it is different genres throughout the book, so it might look a bit different. But in this, it all looks consistent. It's like they got similar artists to do all the types of artwork, and my word, does it look nice. I love the sort of trade dress and the theme of it, the fonts, everything's clear. It is a beautiful, beautiful book. I love what they've done with it. I don't know if this is wrong, and I don't know if it's illegal, but if I could have sex with a PDF, this would be it.
Well, I mean, I agree. I agree that it looks gorgeous, beautiful book, and that's what people are saying too.
Yeah, and you know what? It finally does the game justice, because it's like, you know, when you sort of, I know the game was cheap before, and that was awesome, but you know, like when you show this game to people and you really want to get them into the game, you could show off this book now. You can finally open the book and go, look at this. This it looks awesome, man. Look at the trade dress. Look at the artwork. This is the type of game we're going to be playing, and then you can show it off to your mates and be like, "Isn't it amazing?" One piece I particularly like is the one on page 48 that looks like something from Kill Bill. Like that one. So yeah, just want to say, love this book. Really cool. So well done, Shane. Well done, Carl Kiesler as well. I believe he worked on it. So he's a genius.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. I'm a little disappointed about a couple of things, and the trade dress isn't one of them. I'm a little sad that, I like that hindrances just go in order, but they didn't change the edges, which is a little frustrating to me, because when you're trying to find an edge in the book, you have to know what it falls under, whether it's combat, legendary, whether it is like leadership or any of those things. So that's...
Yeah,
I wish they would.
That has always annoyed me, and now it's still the same. I noticed that yesterday, and it was like, it's so annoying, because it's like, if they just had them all in alphabetical order, I know that there's like different categories, but they should have just a page. You know,
See,
like when they have all the descriptions, I think it should just be alphabetical order. I know there's a reason for it, but I just don't care.
This is the frustrating part about it. Combat edges, the idea that they're under the header combat edges doesn't mean squat. There's no bonus to them being called combat edges. There's no bonus to them being called leadership edges. It's just the category header under which they place similar edges. If you want to do me a favor, set them under the frickin' skill. So if they're novice edges, put them under novice. Then I don't need to flip to the rest of the frickin' book to figure out that I can't have any of these things. Right now, you're flipping through 40 pages trying to read all the novice edges under each one of the combat, leadership, or whatever edges, right? And it's like, so you've got some novice edges on this page, some way over here, and some way over here. Novice would have been sweet.
Well, there's an edge summaries.
But then what always happens? But what always happens is that somebody will go, "Hey, I'm thinking of picking this edge. What does it do?" And you go, and then the GM will go, "Oh yeah, I'll quickly just look that up for you, mate." And then you go to look it up, and then it's like, I can't bloody find the thing because I can't remember which bloody heading it comes under. Is it a leadership edge? Is it combat edge? Or whatever. And it's so annoying. But if they just had it under novice, because you know this guy's picking it because he's a novice character or a veteran character or whatever, that'd be so much easier. I totally feel your pain, Gary. It's never become easier. I should have memorized it by now, to be fair, but I haven't.
Yeah, it's the only disheartening thing about it. It's the one thing that I wish they would have just put it under. You know, it would have been much more useful to me if it was just, here's all the novice stuff. Because when you're playing a game and you're creating a character, all of the novice things are in one area. I'm trying to find the list while I'm rambling on here, but for some reason, I shot to the end of the book and went way past whatchamacallit. I want to check out the what page is the table on, Eric? Do you know?
Which table?
The short list.
I just
there we go.
said 61.
Thanks, pal. Okay, so what do you got? Trait summaries, edge summaries, background edges, combat edges, leadership edges, power edges, professional edges, social, weird, legendary. So even in this, they're still listed under their major header. So
at least that does make it slightly more easy, because then when you're looking at the summary, you know where to find it when you want the big description. So that is actually, to be fair, that does make it easier in this version. But it's still a little bit of a pain in the ass.
You have to go back to the requirements. Like there's edge, requirements, and summary. So you have to skim through the requirements, which is all right to make sure that you can take it, and it'll have an N in it. But you're still now skimming through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages of edges, where you would only have to skim through the novice section, in a sense, depending on if sometimes there's rules that allow you to forego the rank requirement or whatever. But yeah, that's my only beef. It's still a beautiful book by all means, and it, you know what I mean, and it's still fantastic in every way, regardless, because they didn't change it. I would have just liked to have seen that change. The other thing too, I don't know if you guys have noticed, is the character sheet is a bit of a pet peeve of mine. There's things like
I've always hated that type. That one that for some reason Pinnacle always like to do this, where they have this one where it's a bunch of stuff stuck onto a board, and I don't know why they do. For some reason, I mean, your complaint might be different to mine, but the character sheet, it's like. The character sheet. It's like somebody's torn off a bunch of bits of paper and stuck it to a goddamn piece of wood, man. And it's like, ooh, edgy. Like, if you've seen the original Deadlands character sheets, they're a nightmare. They look like some... Oh, God, no. I'm sorry. No, I was going to get really offensive there. Never mind.
So my issue with it is there should just be one slot. Like, you've got 5 slots taking up space under attributes, but it should just write the die type in. You know what I mean? Just put a 6.
No, I like these.
Use a pencil. Okay, that's cool if you like that. The skill section is pretty sweet. I like the idea that you just write in the attached thing. So you've got athletics, you put it in, scratch your deal off. But here's where it gets weird. Under power, you have PP, range, duration, and effect. Look how big the effect box is. What are you going to write in there? That's going to tell you how the effect works, plus how you can use all the other stuff, like say bolt, because they should
you would take a couple of lines.
Yeah.
So you're not going to have by legendary you might have like 5 different. Oh yeah, actually no, because with new power now you can take 2 powers. Yeah, there's not enough room, is there?
No, it's very condensed and very squished together. What they should have done. Or what I would do is change the effect of the power, and I would just put in page number, and so that people can write that in. Because I find that if you put the page number in there, which is a major thing inside the game, you just flip right to the page and away you go, and you can read it, or the player can read it while they're looking at it if they need that refresher, right? Same thing with the edges and advances. They should just put a page number down the side of it. There's Bennies on the page, but you use a material or like a realistic material for it or something like that, but there's a spot for that on here too. I just find that there isn't enough room on this single page for notes, or they're trying to compress the notes into one area and stuff like that. I don't know.
You should see like some of the character sheets from when I've played long campaigns in this game, like that edges and advances section. By the end of it, people like. It's a nightmare with people trying to write the edges and hindrances, what they do, and people forget them anyway. They forget to use them. I mean, I'm guilty of it too. It's crazy. So just write the page number in. I think that's just a good tip. To be fair, trying to fit everything on the sheet. Plus, you're gonna have
power cards now.
Oh God, yeah. Oh, what a dream. But you know what it should be? It should be. I think it should be 2-sided, and have edges. I don't know how it should be laid out. This isn't my forte, but
is there more place? Is there more room in the character folio? I think that's like 7 pages long. It's basically a character.
Let's have a look.
There might be more room for it. That's not in the book, by the way, guys. You have to get it separate right now for backers. If you go in your account on the Pinnacle site, you can download the character sheet and download the folio and a character sheet tent as well. So
I'm looking at the folio. The front of the sheet is exactly the same sheet. Then you've got on the back, you've got background, you've got your vehicle, then you've got your allies. And then after that, you've got state summaries, maps and notes, quick reference chart, setting rule checklist. And for some reason, everything's already checked on there. So that's kind of dumb. And that's it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. Somebody might want to contact Pinnacle and let them know that the setting rules checklist is already all checked. You might want to take the check marks out of there. Yeah.
It's like Pinnacle want you to use all of them.
Yeah, no, that's too funny. That's obviously just an oversight on their part. But that I like that. Setting rule checklist is actually, could come in handy at some point.
No, it ain't terrible, actually. I actually think this is kind of a useful thing. I would print this out for.
But is it interactive so you could click and uncheck them?
Oh. No.
All right.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It is.
Oh, it's not on my one.
Yeah.
You guys are idiots.
Wow.
A stupid PDF reader, maybe, because I ain't working on mine. Stupid PDF reader.
I don't know if you're using Windows or not, but I use, what is this program called that I use? It has a pretty decent OCR as well. Where is the?
I'm using Adobe Acrobat. Screw you, Adobe.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know if this folio, so everything is kind of squished onto the main page there, but you've got your backgrounds, you got a vehicle. I like that they put the vehicle on there and stuff like too. Friends and allies can come in handy too. I find like even in the 50 Fathoms game, one of the guys has a little Jungle Book guy. Stan is what we call him. He's basically what's the guy Mowgli from the Jungle Book. This little kid that was left on the island that he found. And that's tagging along with them. So that would be cool to have the friends and allies thing stuck there. State summaries, I like this. That's pretty sweet. Maps and notes is pretty good. The quick reference chart, super handy. That is really squished in there. But, man, that is something that they should all have that they realize or know they can do. And then, the settings rules checklist is pretty cool, too.
Yeah, not bad. Not bad. At least then people will know what they can do, It's pretty handy. I was chuffed overall with everything that came with it. I felt like I dump on Pinnacle a lot for being kind of crappy with their Kickstarter goals, but actually when I got a bunch of free stuff with that, I was just like, all right, fair enough. I mean, I probably won't use most of it, but the soundtracks was a nice addition. That was pretty cool because I got ETU coming up, and means I got those, so pretty happy. And overall, I actually think the core book looks amazing, and I'm really, really excited to actually reading it, because playing it, I liked all the new chases, and even influenced the story. Although I'm not that on board with it, I felt like it was a good laugh, and I really, really liked the way powers worked. I felt like the changes to the characters were minimal, that anybody that knows the game already is able to get straight into it and stuff like this. So I'm enjoying it so far, and I'm looking forward to playing it again a bit later with you guys.
See, I think it's weird that you two have a problem with influence's story, because you both are really big fans of adventure cards, and that basically does the same thing.
Here's the difference, though. With adventure cards, it's not the player narrating it, and the player doesn't necessarily say, here's how I get out of a situation. And it's not the player being lazy. It's that you draw from a random deck and they get something. And that something may not even be helpful to that character. But it's some little random thing that changes the way that the story is. So it's unexpected for the GM and unexpected for the players. And it comes out at a time that suits the players best. And that I quite like. That's where it's different. I find them kind of different. Although their goal is kind of similar, I find the actual execution entirely different.
So my love for the adventure deck is fast waning. I just have to say. I really like it at novice level because you only get one frickin' card. But now that I'm playing my 50 Fathoms campaign and I've increased everybody to like veteran level, they get 3 cards. And I'm finding now at veteran level that these suckers always have a card to do something. And so
the
there's a lot
thing they want as well.
right? It's like, wait a second. I'm feeling some Matt Stark. I was thinking about Matt my last game because I know he's not a fan of the adventure cards, but I'm like, yeah, this is kind of like, wait a second here. So when you reach heroic level, so you're sorry, not heroic, novice, seasoned, veteran. So they get 3 cards. They can only play 1 though. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they just have it. But see that now you've increased the chances that they're going to have something by 3-fold, essentially, that they can use at some point to get them out of the game or out of a sticky situation. I'll tell you, man, my last 50 Fathoms campaign was top notch. It was spectacular. Our captain is played by a female. She basically seduced Lolanaise out of the town of Taluga. She went in under the white flag scenario. She talked to him. She blew a bunch of smoke up his ass about how cool his ship was, because he doesn't in the game, but in my version he had a man of war. So she wanted to see this. She's like, there's only a couple of these things around. Take me to your ship, kind of a thing. So they went back and had some wine and stuff like that. And it was nothing weird or creepy or any of that kind of stuff. And it was really actually for me and her playing this. Oops, I just whacked my mic. Sorry about that. There was this sort of realistic feeling to it where I was being, as a man, aggressive with her. And every time that happened, she would take a step back and be like, no, let's have some wine, or, no, show me this, kind of a thing. So there was always this sort of give and take, which was pretty cool. Anyways, when it all sort of came right down to it, the scene ended with she was on top of him. There was no sexy time. They were getting to it, but the scene ended with her reaching into her boot, pulling out a gun, and blasting his friggin' head off, which she not only got 26 on the damage roll, but then played the any ranged double the damage of any ranged attack, and she hit this guy in the face for like 56 freaking points of damage. But she played it that she manipulated this guy through persuasion into his bedroom and got him in a precarious situation, and then used the adventure card to freaking land base this guy's head in half. She literally like turned his head into a freaking split watermelon with this gunshot and an adventure card, which was pretty cool. And now they got a man of war out of the deal. And well played, Brittany, if you're listening to this. That was a fantastic scenario or scene that we had sort of played out, which was pretty cool. And again, nothing sexual, nothing crazy or any of that stuff, but it was just well done on her. It's not something that you experience when you play with a sausage party, basically. Like a female perspective at the table is refreshing because they just do things differently than the sausages would do. So it was pretty cool. It was a great game for me anyway.
All right, how about we wrap this up, guys?
My name's Harrison Hunt, and I do what I like. Right now, I ride a bike through the mall where I ain't supposed to do that. I'm from the podcast Tabletop Twats, and this is the wrap up, and it's gonna be sick. I'm right now, you can suck my dick, cause I don't give a shit what you think about my shit. So suck my mother big fucking dick. Yeah! What I'm trying to say is it's the mother wrap up. Just like Mama used to make.
See, nobody cared about Gary's story there. I thought it was a cool story. Sorry, Gary.
No worries.
No, it was. It's just that we're running out of time here. That's all.
Yeah, we are. We need to start a trend here of not calling it SWADE anymore.
How about SWADE?
Yeah, SWADE.
SWADE sounds good.
Can we call it?
Class.
How about S-Wade? SWADE.
SWADE.
It sounds French.
Yeah, so we're playing some more SWADE later today. But yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Oh, wait. Sorry. I've just had an email in from Bakare Tunde.
Uh-oh.
He says that he's got currently in his bank account 3,000 copies of SWADE, and that he can't release it unless we send him a $300 deposit. We got that? We got that in the bank?
Gary's got it.
No, I don't know. I'm broke, man. What are you talking about? I don't have any money.
Right, so wait, how are we going to get these 3,000 copies of SWADE unless we send this to Bakari Tunde over in Nigeria? He says he's a doctor. It's just an admin error.
He's a Prince doctor.
Well, he's Dr. Prince. Oh, God. Well, we'll figure it out. Anyway, thanks for listening, everyone. If you want to contact us, email us at thewilddie@gmail.com, or we're on Facebook, YouTube, all of that stuff at the Wild Die Podcast. We're also on MeWe. That's up and coming. You know, we started it. Twitter, at the Wild Die, Nerds International group on MeWe. That's where we're at. And go there if you want to mingle with us. So, Patreon, of course. If you want to chuck us a buck for what we do, then please do that. And you can get all new exclusive content there, previews and swag. What type of swag? Well, chuck us a buck and you'll find out. And of course, it is at this point that we would like to thank the following people via a jingle.
Sean, Richard, Uncle J, Raspberry Chalmers, Alan Bray, Conrad, Erasmus, Neubert, Corey Dersham, Corey Judd, Murder Hobo, Shaw, Ray, Aristia, Rob Tao, Bubbles, Manuel Sams, Pure Mongrel, Stephen Dragons, Forms of Ya, Daryl Cartier, Frank Teffer, Judy Gill, Dasher, Louis Strad, Jens Schoenheim, John Peterson, Carl Kiesler, Mr. Stagg, Remy Villado, Digital Dungeon Master, Trevor Hurst.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. All the
Thank you
patrons.
so much. Oh, God. Those are the best guys on the planet, are they not?
Yep.
Yeah.
Best friends.
Fact. Yep.
All right. Yeah. Tune in 2 weeks for another episode talking about SWADE. But yeah, this might be the last episode you hear before the holidays. So Merry Christmas to everybody. And this is Eric saying, hold on to your balloons.
And this is Bakari Tunde saying, Happy Kwanzaa and grapple the skies.
Oh, I thought Bakari Tunde was the guy that wanted the email for the books. Wait a second, you're Bakari Tunde.
See you later, everyone.
This is Gary saying, keep your pants on, keep it fun. Thanks, everybody. We're out. I gotta go kill Harrison. Later.
The Wild Die Podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by Pinnacle Entertainment Group or official Pinnacle licensees. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of the respected owners. All music and artwork is used with permission of Pinnacle Entertainment Group. All items are used under fair use and educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Wild Die Podcast.